It took me about 7 years personally to break six figures or 100,000 a year as a filmmaker. And I did that after graduating film school. So I'm not counting film school in that 7 years. After graduating film school, it took me a whole 7 years to get to that point. Before that, I was struggling some years, maybe 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 as a freelancer. And along the way, I obviously learned a lot of valuable lessons, made plenty of mistakes. So I wanted to kind of compress that into this video to kind of give you a blueprint on how to go from zero to making six figures as a filmmaker. Now, the very first part is you got to actually get good at the craft of filmmaking. You got to get good at a lot of the technical side, the storytelling side, and a lot of the things that you just have to spend time learning. And when I started, really there wasn't much of YouTube or online education to teach you that stuff. So I learned the craft side of filmmaking or the technical side of filmmaking through film school. That's typically what most people that I graduated with had to do if they wanted to pursue filmmaking. Nowadays, though, obviously YouTube has exponentially grown in the last 15 years, and you could learn a ton about filmmaking and practice with a lot of cheaper equipment than I had access to. Literally in film school, we had to learn on film for some reason, on 35 and 60 millimeter film, and then move into digital when I graduated. But now, I think if I was to do it over again, I don't know if film school is the right direction where you could learn and practice a lot of this in the 4 years that it would take to start and finish film school, that you could do this on your own and get a lot of friends to just shoot movies and shoot different things for different clients or even spec commercials to really craft your skill. And even though I think film school still has a place, in film school, you learn a lot of theory, you learn a lot of storytelling. But I think if you put a lot of that into practice on your own outside of film school, you're really gonna excel faster than the traditional college path. Okay, so I recommend you do as much as you can. Take on any free shoot that you could get. Jump on any student movie that you could get on. Shoot weddings, shoot commercials, shoot whatever you get hands on. Doesn't matter what the pay is, to just improve your craft. Do as much as you can, but it really needs to be hands-on. It has to be less about theory and more about practice, so you really craft your skill, so then we could make the money that we deserve to make, but our skill level has to move up as we go. And I want to make sure you don't mix up getting better as a filmmaker with getting better gear. I'm talking about the skill set as a filmmaker, the technical and the creative side of filmmaking. That comes into shooting, lighting, editing, and storytelling, but it doesn't have anything to do with gear. Although gear over time does need to get upgraded, you do need to rent better gear over time as you get bigger and bigger projects, but that just marginally improves your skill. And there's a ton of video I'm sure you've seen on YouTube where they basically compare amateur filmmaker with a high-end camera with someone that's been doing it for a long time, but using a cell phone or $1,000 camera, and they could compete. And usually the person with the cheaper camera definitely outperforms the person with a $100,000 camera because it's about the skill of filmmaking. So that's what I want to make sure in the early stages, you do everything you can to improve that, which includes a lot of free shoots, which is completely okay because right now you got to think of this as your educational stage to improve your skill set. Now, once you feel pretty decent about your technical skill and your storytelling skills as a filmmaker, the next step is obviously figuring out how to make money. And one of the best ways to do that is by getting freelance gigs, or you could also get temporary gigs. Some production companies may give you a temporary gig, meaning it's a few months and it's not a permanent job. At this point, I still don't want you to think so much about your rate here. Right now, we're still in the learning phase. So in that stage, right after you get pretty good with your technical skills, the easiest place to get started in the world of video production is as a production assistant. And even though I had already gone to film school and I had spent a ton of money on the educational side, I still started as a production assistant making $150, sometimes $200 a day, which even nowadays is still kind of the same rate. Maybe $250 a day is what you could expect to get paid as a production assistant, at least in the US. Now, the way you get that type of job is you simply have to contact production companies in your area. Now, I get emails like this all the time, but they just got to be good, okay? They got to be enticing to the person reading the email at the production company. So you could simply look up production companies around you or video production companies around you and send them an email, introduce yourself, and they always are looking for a good PA. Even if you get that first gig as a free gig just to basically make that connection with that production company, that's again fine. In the beginning, it's just really hard to get in. But once you show that you're a hardworking person, that you know your way around as a production assistant, again, because you've been doing a ton of different things on your own for free and with friends, you're going to get hired again, okay? And this gives you a hands-on education, okay? This is a little bit different than learning things on YouTube or just going out and shooting things based on the skills you already have. Now you can learn from other people. This is how I really hone my skills as a director of photography and as a director, right? I watched other directors of photographers and directors on set as a PA, right? That's how I got started. So then I saw how they worked. It was a way different experience than just watching YouTube videos of how people work. It's much more hands-on and it's much more tangible experience that you really need. Now, the next thing here is, as a production assistant, I had a camera. So I recommend you get a hold of a camera or save up enough to buy a basic camera. And with that camera, I basically started putting myself out as a camera operator, right? Now, you don't want to tell people you're a PA, but you're really a director DP. This is not what we want to think of right now. We want to think of, hey, I'm still honing my skills, so I'm willing to shoot for a lower rate to gain some experience. So that's exactly what I did. I was working as a PA for my rates, but I was working at a lower rate as a camera operator. And then through my career there in the beginning, I constantly try to move up. So you just kind of think of a path. What's the next thing after a PA? Well, there's many different directions you could go, but I wanted to pursue the director of photography route. So I wanted to learn media manager a role. Then I wanted to learn assistant camera role, then camera operator. So I was mixing all those different things as I moved from one to another. And I cut the tie from the last one. So I was no longer a production assistant. Maybe after a year or 6 months, I think is what I was doing. Then I was a media manager only. So people saw me as that very specific role. Now you raise your rate. Now you're maybe making $100 more a day, $200 more a day. Assistant camera, camera operator. And eventually you work through as a freelancer by making all those contacts through production companies. Now let's talk about the third stage. This is where you could get to 100,000 plus, even 250,000 plus mark. Now you have to choose based on the direction that you're going so far. Here is the crossroad that I chose, and this really is what took me to 6 figures very quickly. When you get to a path where you freelanced for a while, you feel pretty good, you know a lot about different types of jobs in video production, you have to choose, do you want to continue as a freelancer? Or do you want to create your own company and be more control of the type of jobs that you get? Now, I talk about that every single week on this channel, the video production side of things. But let me talk to you right now first about freelancing and still making 6 figures as a freelancer and that path, and then I'll explain the other path in a second. But if you stay on the path of freelancing, the way you get to 6 figures is by specializing. You can't just be a one-man band filmmaker and take on any project you get, because then you will be extremely overworked. Because if you take on shooting and producing and editing and directing, it's too much on your plate and you're not going to get the top dollars for any one of those jobs. You're doing 10 different people's jobs and you're going to get basically the bottom of the barrel. You're fighting with everybody else that does the exact same thing. So if you specialize as a freelancer, this is where you level up. And I'll mention my preferred path in a second, which is making your own video production company, which really steps up this whole timeline. But right now, I pursue the path as a freelancer, as a DP, which I still do to this day through my own company though. But as a DP, I took on corporate and commercial gigs. And it doesn't matter what size of a market you're living in, there's plenty of work for corporate and commercial work. There are a ton of companies in every type of community and industry. Now, the very typical day rate that you could get as a director of photography could be around $1,000 to $1,200 without your gear, okay? Now, you have to keep in mind that gear typically rents in addition to your day rate. So if you own the gear and you don't have to rent it out, which a lot of people do, then you could make anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 per day, which is typically where I'm at as a freelancer with gear, right? If I think of myself as a freelancer, although I run this through my own video production company. Now, keep this in mind because this takes a long time to get to, okay? You're not gonna make $2,000 a day pursuing this path on the next 6 months. So I would say it would take several years if you follow the same path I did to get to a point where people are paying you that much money, right? And you still have to get a decent amount of gigs, again, to make 6 figures. Let's say you're making on average $1,000 a day. Well, that requires about 100 gigs a year for you to make six figures, $100,000. That's, again, only done by specializing, because you can't really make that high of a rates, $1,000 or $2,000 a day, if you're just an all one-man band. Or if you are doing that and you're doing well in that, you still can't get 100 gigs a year probably. It's going to be really hard, because now you're having to concentrate on editing and putting a whole thing together. It's going to be really hard for one person to do all of that, okay? So this is why you need to specialize and level up as you specialize, because that will help you get to six figures with less gigs, okay? So if you do $1,000 days, you only need 100 of them. But if you're a production assistant making $200 a day, now there's not enough time in the year for you to ever make six figures doing that, right? That's why you got to level up. And that's why you can't really do $200 shoots. How many $200 shoots you need to do to get to that point if your goal is to make more money as a filmmaker? Now, the other option, and my preferred path, and what really made the transition to six figures for me, was transitioning from freelancing to running my own video production company. The transition I made in 2013, and it only took me 6 months to make that transition. But I should mention, if I was brand new, I don't think I could have made that in 6 months. If I was brand new to filmmaking, if I was my first year freshman in college, you still need to know the technical side of things, because then you could actually produce really good content that could demand that higher level of pay. But I also needed to learn some new skills that I did not have. That was marketing, that was sales, and that was just operating a business. All those things were new to me, okay? So that's where that really 6 months, I was trying to hone those skills, or really figuring out those skills. It wasn't learning filmmaking. I already knew filmmaking, okay? So this is for the people that already are good and proficient at making videos. They need to make that transition to the next level of learning these new skill sets. So they're very learnable, okay? Just like filmmaking, I learned all of those things by just looking things up, taking courses, learning them, applying them, and getting better at them. Just like I did with filmmaking, okay? I didn't have to go to a traditional school for the business side of it, because again, a lot of these things nowadays are very accessible. They were in 2013 as well. So I taught myself a lot of what I'm about to cover. But once you make this transition, you could make a lot more money than just being a freelancer, even a specialized freelancer. And the main reason for that is when you have your own company, you no longer are trading time for money, right? Because now you could leverage other people's time, people that you bring into your video production company. For example, other freelancers that you send down on projects that you bring in. And this exact transition, because of this exact same thing, took me from making roughly $60,000 a year as a specialized freelancer to making $250,000 a year in just 6 months, okay? So that's basically that transitional point. That 6 months is when I learned sales, marketing, and really figuring out how to get clients and leveraging other people's time so I could do a lot more projects than what I could do for just trading my own time, right? A lot of production company I know have that exponential growth in the very beginning, and then they grow from there after that happens, okay? So we started out with basically making $3,000 to $5,000 videos. That was sort of on the low end of video production, and it still was a saturated market. I'm in Chicago, there was a ton of other people trying the same thing. So just like it is in small markets, when people think, well, there's not enough clients to pay that kind of money, it's the same exact problem with bigger markets, right? Where they're more saturated. People think the exact same thing there, that there's too many people. But really the problem is mostly is not in existence, really, because there's plenty of people. If you create an offer that's irresistible to them and they really need it for their business, especially in the corporate commercial end, that $3,000 to $5,000 range is really easy to get when everything is set up correctly. Now, with that range, that $3,000 to $5,000 range, it typically takes anywhere 20 to 25 projects a year to just make six figures, right? So you could either pursue volume, meaning you do, 50, maybe 50 projects a year around that range to get to where I was, or you could pursue getting higher end clients, right? So you could get clients that do $50,000 jobs even. And that's kind of the path I took, right? I started thinking I'll only do the $3,000, $5,000 jobs, but even through those jobs, you get bigger clients. So you have to choose a path there, right? Do you want volume? With volume, you have to have more people on either on staff or freelancers that you have access to. So you could do a lot more. then multiple $5,000 jobs per month, or you just pursue or level up to the next higher paying clients, which then you could really level that up to Fortune 500 companies as your clients as you grow this video production company. But I do have a video coming up in a couple of days because I want to break down in more detail the difference between freelancing and running your own video production company to really make it clear what the opportunities are and what the potential path is for both. Because this is really a path you got to choose, and it's really hard to do both at the same time. So I will post that in a couple of days, and I want to talk about why I think the video production path just makes the most sense for just about anybody trying to make more money as a filmmaker. So I will see you on the next video.